разделяет только Берингов пролив, да и то, там два острова между...
We are separated only by the Bering Strait. Even there are two islands between the Russian and American sides totaling just 4 kilometers. We are close neighbors, that is a fact. It is also important that a significant part of Russia and the United States' shared history is connected with Alaska. Many positive events. Even today, there is a huge cultural heritage from the era of Russian America. Orthodox churches remain. There are more than 700 geographical names of Russian origin. During World War II, it was in Alaska that the legendary air route began for the delivery of combat aircraft and other equipment under the Lend-Lease agreement. It was a dangerous, difficult route over vast icy expanses, but ice crews and specialists from both countries did everything to help achieve victory. They risked and gave their lives for the common victory. I have just been in the city of Magadan in Russia. There stands a monument to Russian and American ice crews. The flags on the monument are both Russian and American. I know that there is a similar monument here as well, at the military cemetery today, just a few kilometers from here. Soviet pilots who died performing that heroic mission are buried. The Americans have shown respectful care for their memory. It looks dignified and noble. We will always remember other historical examples when our countries together defeated common enemies in the spirit of comradeship and alliance. We helped and supported each other. I am confident this legacy will help us rebuild and establish mutually beneficial, equal relations at a new stage, even in the most difficult conditions. As you know, Russian-American meetings at the highest level had not been held for more than 4 years. That is a long time. The past period was very difficult for bilateral relations, and frankly, they had sunk to the lowest point since the modern Cold War. This does not benefit either of our countries, nor the world as a whole. It was clear that sooner or later the situation needed to be corrected, to move from confrontation to dialogue. In this regard, a personal meeting of the heads of the two states was truly overdue. Of course, with serious and meticulous preparation, this work was carried out. President Trump and I have established very good direct contacts. We have spoken openly and repeatedly by phone, and as you know, several times a special representative of the U.S. President, Mr. Whitaker, visited Russia. Our assistants and foreign policy officials maintained regular contact. As you know well, one of the central issues was the situation around Ukraine. We see the U.S. administration's and President Trump's personal desire to facilitate the resolution of the Ukrainian conflict, their willingness to understand its essence and origins. I have repeatedly said that for Russia, the events in Ukraine pose fundamental threats to our national security. Moreover, we have always regarded and still regard the Ukrainian people, I have said this many times, as fraternal. As strange as that may sound in today's circumstances, we share the same roots, and all that is happening is a tragedy and a source of deep pain for us. Therefore, our country is sincerely interested in putting an end to it. At the same time, we believe that for a Ukrainian settlement to be sustainable and long-term, all root causes of the crisis must be addressed. As we have repeatedly stated, all of Russia's legitimate concerns must be taken into account, and a fair balance in the sphere of security in Europe and the world must be restored. I agree with President Trump as he said today, that Ukraine's security must be ensured. Of course, we are ready to work on this. We hope that the understanding we have reached will bring us closer to that goal and open the way to peace in Ukraine. We expect that in Kyiv and European capitals, this will be received constructively, and no obstacles will be created. There will be no attempts through provocation or behind-the-scenes intrigues to disrupt the emerging progress. By the way, with the arrival of the new U.S. administration, bilateral trade has started to increase. So far, this is mostly symbolic, but there is still a 20% increase. I am talking about many interesting areas for joint work. Obviously, Russian-American business and investment partnership has enormous potential. Russia and the U.S. have much to offer each other in trade, energy, digital technology, high-tech and space exploration, cooperation in the Arctic, and the revival of interregional contacts, including between our Far East and the U.S. West Coast, also seems relevant. In general, it is important and necessary for our countries to turn the page and return to cooperation. As I said earlier, near the border between Russia and the U.S., there is the so-called international date line, where one can literally step from yesterday into tomorrow. I hope that in politics, we can do the same. I would like to thank President Trump for our joint work and for the friendly and trusting tone of our conversation. The most important thing is that both sides were focused on results. We see that the US president has a clear understanding of what he wants to achieve, genuinely cares about the prosperity of his country, and at the same time shows understanding of Russia's existence and national interests. We hope that today's agreements will serve not only as a foundation for resolving the Ukrainian problem, but also as a starting point for restoring pragmatic business relations between Russia and the US. In conclusion, I want to add this. I remember that during the last contacts with the previous administration, I tried to convince my former American colleague that the situation should not be allowed to escalate to military action, which could have severe consequences. I said directly that it would be a big mistake. Today, when President Trump says that if he had been president, there would have been no war, I believe that is indeed true. I confirm this, because overall President Trump and I have established a very good business-like and trusting contact. I have every reason to believe that by following this path, we can reach a resolution to the conflict in Ukraine as quickly as possible. Thank you for your attention. Anchorage, Alaska, US-15, 2025, restriction. Users must credit. Kremlin Press Office, handout must not obscure logo. Editorial use only, Russian President Vladimir Putin said during a joint press conference with U.S. President Donald Trump that the Alaska summit was held in a constructive and mutually respectful atmosphere, highlighting both historical and contemporary ties between the two countries. Speaking about the shared history of Russia and the United States, Putin recalled the strategic role of Alaska during World War II, including the Lend-Lease air route and the cooperation of ice crews from both countries. He emphasized monuments in Russia and Alaska commemorating those efforts, noting that the Americans have shown respectful care for their memory. Putin also addressed the Ukraine crisis, stating that Russia sees it as a fundamental national security concern, and reiterated the importance of considering all root causes for a sustainable settlement. He said that both sides aim to work toward peace, and that the agreements reached at the summit could facilitate constructive international responses in Kiev and European capitals. On economic and bilateral cooperation, Putin noted a 20% increase in trade since the arrival of the new U.S. administration, and highlighted potential areas for collaboration, including energy, technology, space exploration, and Arctic development. Concluding his remarks, Putin expressed confidence in the positive outcome of direct and trusting contacts with Trump, saying the summit could serve as a foundation for resolving the Ukrainian conflict and restoring pragmatic business relations between Russia and the United States.
И чем быстрее, тем лучше до завершения конфликта на Украине. Благодарю вас за внимание.